going to get started with our noon luncheon program right now. I'm once again Tom Lavichuk, Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association Southeastern Wisconsin chapter, and it's my honor and privilege to kick off this luncheon session where we're going to give out one more of our final award for the conference, our Advocacy Award, and so I'm going to move right into that. This award recognizes significant work in impacting legislation or services for the benefit of others. And the winners of our Advocacy Award this year are two people, Representative Mike Rohrkast and Representative Diane Hesselbein. So if I could just have your attention, please, while we do this. Can I just have everybody's attention, please, while we give this award? Thank you. So Mike Rohrkast chaired and Diane Hesselbein vice-chaired the Speakers Task Force on Alzheimer's and Dementia, which was appointed by Speaker Robin Vos, and did an outstanding job. They were tasked with leading a bipartisan group to develop legislative proposals that would have the greatest impact for families living with Alzheimer's and dementia. They worked hard to understand the overall picture and trajectory of the Alzheimer's and dementia epidemic. They held hearings throughout the state. They listened to families, to colleagues, and key stakeholders. And under the leadership of these two people, with help from the Alzheimer's Association and a number of other groups, they developed legislation to address the biggest challenges. Their collaborative work resulted in 10 bills that were introduced in the Wisconsin Assembly, which included increasing the number of dementia care specialists, education for crisis intervention teams, grants for respite care through the Alzheimer's Family and Caregiver Support Program, increased funding to the UW-Madison Research Center, and other bills. Many of their colleagues praised their work and acknowledged that this is just the beginning and much more work needs to be done. But we are very proud to announce that 3 bills were signed into law by Governor Walker, including the historic largest ever increase in the Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program, $1 million in additional funding for respite for families. The other 2 bills were related to the very important issue of crisis, including $250,000 in crisis grants to go to counties to increase the dementia-capable skills of mobile crisis teams, and the final one to the State Department of Health Services and Kitty and her staff to develop a dementia pilot for a dementia crisis unit and to study that issue even further. So in appreciation of their leadership, the Alzheimer's Association Wisconsin Chapter Network proudly recognizes Representative Mike Rohrkast and Representative Diane Hesselbein with our 2016 Outstanding Advocacy Award. Please come up.
Well, thank you so much. This means so much to me. My father had Alzheimer's and died a few years ago. And so when I was asked to be part of this task force, I really debated and I really thought long and hard about what I could give and would my personal experience cloud what everybody else in the committee wanted to do. But really looking deep inside myself, I realized this is a way I could give back and make my journey something a little bit bigger than what it was. And as we listened to people all over the state of Wisconsin, really this one thing we kept hearing about was respite care over and over again. And similar themes were happening all over the state of Wisconsin. And so at the end, it wasn't that hard to come up with legislation to help people in the state of Wisconsin. But a lot of credit really does go to Representative Rohrkast, who was the chair of the committee. And he kept all of us marching together all over the state, from Rhinelander to Middleton to Dodgeville, all over the place, listening to people's stories. And that's really was the culmination, the 10 bills that we put together, was really listening to people's stories. So thank you so much for this award. On behalf of my father, I accept in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hesselbein, and thank you, Tom, for the introduction and for this award. This is a great honor, and I also just want to acknowledge Representative Hesselbein. This is an example of where I think our government can very well work together. We can work on a bipartisan level on an issue that is extremely important to both us personally, also to our state budget, our state operations. This will make the state of Wisconsin a better place to live, to work, and to take care of our elderly population. I do want to thank the Alzheimer's Association. I want to thank my fellow legislators. Thank Governor Walker for signing the bills that we did get passed. We still have more work to do, so we will look at some of those for future work in the next legislative session. Most importantly, though, I just want to thank everybody that's here in this audience and all the caregivers that are in the state of Wisconsin, the thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of caregivers that are out there, either formal or informal, that are caring for the over 115,000 individuals in the state of Wisconsin that have some form of dementia. They are making their lives better, and they are making their families' lives better. And my hope is that we can make a family's life experience better for both the individual but also for their loved ones, then we will have accomplished something here that truly is meaningful and will last for a long time. So thank you again for the award, and most importantly, thank you for caring about this issue.
Why don't we step over on the side here and get it over? Down or over here? Oh, over. All right. Well, thank you so much again, and thanks everybody for your attention during that time. And now we're going to give a brief overview of the Alzheimer's Association advocacy initiatives and put out a plea to all of you to consider, if you're not already part of our advocacy network, to become part of that network. A big way that these legislative victories are won is because the Alzheimer's Association has an incredible statewide network of advocates. We work on these kinds of issues all throughout the state. We work on federal issues. As you heard this morning from Elizabeth Edgerly, we had the biggest ever increase in Alzheimer's research funding on the federal level, $350 million. That's a direct result of Alzheimer's Association advocacy. So to give us our advocacy overview, I'm going to ask Tim Harrington, our advocacy coordinator for the state, to come up, and he's going to give us a brief overview of what the issues look like. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying a great conference. Before I get into that, just before lunch here, I was in Representatives Rohrkast and Hesselbein's session, which was very informative. And one of the things I learned is Speaker Voss put together 3 task forces this last legislative session. Of the 3 task force, the task force on Alzheimer's and dementia was the only one that got any bills passed into law, and there were 3 of them. So if we could get a round of applause again for this task force and these. So our speaker this morning spoke about our core services, what we do, and advocacy is a big part of that. Each year, we've talked here at this lunch about what we've done in the state, what we've accomplished, which is quite a bit. Due in big part to Representatives Rohrkast and Hesselbein, to Kitty Rhodes and DHS, but we're also making great strides on the federal level. Tom mentioned it just a minute ago that last year we got a record amount increase of $350 million for Alzheimer's research. Every year, the Alzheimer's Association, our federal offices, federal public policy offices in Washington convene our advocacy forum. This year, this was attended by 1,200 people representing all 50 states, as well as Puerto Rico, Canada, and a number of European nations. 5 years ago, the first time I went to it, there were only 560 people there. So you can see how the awareness, how this momentum is growing nationally. This year we had three asks. 2 of them are consistent. They've been consistent. Money is consistent every year, funding to find a cure. And the Hope for Alzheimer's Act, which is help, outcomes, planning, and education. This is a bill that was put out there about 3 or 4 years ago that would increase the time that a doctor has when giving a diagnosis to actually sit down and talk to that family about what care opportunities, what are the things you're going to need to think about going forward as you start walking this journey of Alzheimer's. Like I say, this is the 3rd time it's been introduced. Currently, there are the most supporters, most co-sponsors that we've seen. Over 60% of the House of Representatives have signed on as a co-sponsor and 53% of the Senate. So one of the big pushes we're going to have is get to these committees, get this out on the floor, get a hearing on it, push it forward. Another one, I mean, we're not going to rest on our laurels with the $350 million increase. Researchers say we need to be at $2 billion. That's what they're telling us they need to be at to effectively find a way to prevent, treat, or cure this disease by 2025. So our ask this year is for $400 million in the FY17 budget. As a new member of our ambassador team, a guy by the name of Doug Riegel, who is kind of our volunteer liaison to Congressman Sensenbrenner's office, wrote us a note afterwards, and this was his first forum. And he said, never in a million years did I think a young kid growing up from Kewaskum would be walking into a congressman's office and asking him for $400 million. So we did it, though. So that is a big push. Another one this year is a brand new bill that was introduced last summer on the House side, and coincidentally was introduced on the Senate side while we were out there by Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin. It's the Palliative Care, Hospice Education, and Training Act, or PACHETA. What this does is it puts in initiatives to increase palliative care training in hospice situations. Right now, on average, about 48% people who have Alzheimer's die in hospice care, and what is lacking is this palliative care. And what palliative care is making those last months of life, it doesn't have to be a life-ending disease, but making making difficult diseases more comfortable. My father was in palliative care at the end, and not only did they deal with him and keep him as comfortable as he could be, which was in obviously the end of his life, but they went out of their way to take care of our family as well, and that our needs were addressed. So what this bill is it's trying to do that. It's trying to increase that. Right now, there are only about, where's the number here? 265 physicians nationwide who were trained in palliative care. What this task force that looked at this, that put out this bill, concluded is that they need 6,000 to keep up with the numbers as they are today. So this is a bill that would push it in to make it required that hospice situations, that you get doctors, nurses, staff trained in palliative care to make the end of life, to make this thing, living with this disease at the end of it, that much easier on families. So our efforts are going to be ongoing. You know, this is something that we will be pushing. All 3 of these. We'll be working with the task force on a state level. But I encourage anyone who wants to, who's willing, get involved with us. Whether you're able to go to Washington or not, you can always take part in meetings in town halls around your town, around the state. And we're always looking to engage as many people as we can. So that's about it. Thank you again all for coming. Enjoy your afternoon sessions. I think Tom's got a few more remarks for you.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. And now we're going to move into our final presentation of this luncheon session, which is something that I think you're going to find to be pretty fascinating, those of you who stayed to see it. And I'm going to introduce Steve Walters from Wisconsin Eye. Many of you have seen things going around in our email networks about Wisconsin Eye and what it's doing in terms of putting together a series of stories about Alzheimer's and dementia in Wisconsin. Steve is a very highly esteemed journalist, a long career in newspaper and now in the Wisconsin Eye online thing, which tracks all the legislative meetings that happen in Madison. If you ever want to see your legislature at work, you can tune into Wisconsin Eye. But he's done a fabulous job pulling some things together, and he's going to show us a clip from what he's been producing so far. So please give a big round of applause to Steve Walters.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about Wisconsin Eye. It's a privilege to be here with you professionals. Wisconsin Eye, there are about 25 public affairs channels across the nation. Now, what are they? They cover your local capitals. We are not public TV. We are not public radio. But Wisconsin Eye has a contract to cover the legislature. But we also have a duty and an obligation to pay attention to issues of statewide importance. And dementia is certainly that. And we are a nonprofit, and I know that rings some bells. You can relate to that. So Wisconsin Eye, wiseye.org is our website. I'll be talking about that in a minute. We produced a special series, and it goes live today. And it's a privilege to be a part of it. It's called Dealing with Dementia. My friends at AARP, I went to them last September and October, and I said, please put me in a room with those who have dementia and their caregivers and professionals. And they sent me to a memory cafe in Watertown, and my eyes were opened. It was absolutely fascinating, some of the stories and the interactions. And I really got engaged in the issue of dementia. And every one of those people at that memory cafe had a story, and I went up at the end of it, and I said, please, can Wisconsin Eye interview you in your homes, in your institutional settings about dementia? And 4 or 5 very courageous people said, yes, we will share our stories. So between December and April, Wisconsin Eye taped 31 interviews with those with dementia, with professionals, wonderful people. Many of them are here, but the list is, I would leave somebody out, so I want to thank everybody who participated. So what you're first going to see now is a trailer or a promotion for Dealing with Dementia, which is a 12-segment series, and then I'll talk about that after you see our short trailer. Please.
Actually, he tells me almost every day, I'm worried about when I'm going to forget you.
I want to die here, but I doubt if I will.
And down deep, it might have been a little relief that he was going to get good care that I wouldn't have to be responsible for.
The number of Wisconsin residents affected by Alzheimer's and dementia will almost double in 20 years. That's why Wisconsin Eye will be presenting a new special series, Dealing with Dementia. We'll meet the patients and their family members who are directly affected by the stress, grief, and loneliness dementia can bring. We'll talk with the caregivers who dedicate themselves to making a difference in people's lives. We'll examine support organizations and other resources out there to ease the burden on dementia patients and their families. We'll visit Watertown, which is quickly becoming the first dementia-friendly city in our state, and learn how all Wisconsin businesses can learn to be more dementia-friendly. We'll present the 10 warning signs of dementia and talk with leading medical researchers to find out where we stand in our battle with this terrible disease. It's Dealing with Dementia, coming soon to Wisconsin Eye.
So that's our short introductory trailer. I just do the interviews. We have a tremendously talented production team. But I do need to apologize because, Kitty Rhodes gave me this book, Building Dementia-Friendly Communities. We mentioned Watertown, but now I have to also note the advanced dementia programs in Ozaukee County, Fort Atkinson, Fox Valley, Waukesha, Chippewa Valley, and Milwaukee. So if I didn't, I think you'd come up afterwards and say yes, but and you would be justified. I want to thank you for your patience. Those that we interviewed as early as December and February, we thought we could get this produced by February 1. That was my naivety and running out ahead of the production team. I got a little too excited. So it's May 1. I hope you'll find it worth waiting for. Finally, I want to thank, We opened with Jim Loomis for telling his story, Jim and Mary, in Fort Atkinson. And then we watched Betty Notch, who called me today to say she's 76, living in Watertown. How can I watch this? And she's such a gracious lady. And then Miriam Schuett, whose husband Ellsworth is now institutionalized. So I want to thank those who have a dementia for telling me their stories. And I'm so thankful that I was able to participate and share the lives of caregivers. And you professionals, you just really touched me in your ability to talk about where the research is now and the long game and the eventual goal. No, there's no cure, but I remember one of the researchers, maybe it was Dr. Carlson, saying if we could just delay onset by 5 years, what a tremendous advantage that would be. So remember this, our Dealing with Dementia, we're a nonprofit. We don't get any public or tax funds. So this was done kind of part-time because there's always things happening in the Capitol, right? Representative Workcast and Representative Hesselbein, my friends. So we did this part-time, and now I want you to re-meet those of you that perhaps didn't hear former Governor Schreiber. I sat at his kitchen table. We taped a 32-minute interview. He shared his life. He shared the fact that caregiving has cost him $360,000 in his medical expenses because he was so worn down. I was really touched by former Governor Schreiber. So let's take a few minutes and learn a little bit more about the journey of Marty and Elaine Schreiber. Please. How long have you two been married?
Been married 54 years.
54 years.
And it's been a great run.
Marty, politics can be a pretty cruel mistress. So she put up with your ambitions, Senate, Lieutenant Governor, Governor, running for mayor, right?
From the very beginning, she was a true partner. I could not have asked for a better friend or a better soulmate. A woman of courage and a wonderful First Lady. She still is a First Lady today.
She has Alzheimer's?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
You think you can do it alone. I mean, this is your wife of 50 plus years. She's been with you through thick and thin and sadness and happiness. And now all of a sudden, you have to get someone to help her? I tried any number of things. Once having an in-home service firm come in, and they interviewed Elaine, and Elaine looked at me and he said, if you think I'm going to allow another woman in my home, you've got another guest coming. And so there was no way anything of that would happen. So you have to think about an alternative place of her living. My God, for any spouse to think about all of the life they've had together and to separate themselves by putting them in an assisted living facility and sort of like giving up, well, I had to turn that corner and had to understand that common sense, intelligence dictates I've got to help Elaine be who she is now. Not who she once was. That will never happen again. But who she is now.
What advice would you give caregivers?
Number one, you're going to be in for a tough time. That's number one. I'd like to tell you that it's going to be a happy joyride. It's going to be very, very challenging. And if you're going to go on a challenge journey, plan it out a little bit. Sit and think, what is the best thing I can do? Well, I think one of the best things you can do is just to understand that if it is going to be a challenge, you need to try and understand as much as possible about how you can make that journey easier, either through getting assistance, learning more about the disease, knowing that you can call the Alzheimer's Association at any time to get further guidance and assistance. I can tell you that you're going to have a great impact on your loved one's life for the better if you understand how to cope with Alzheimer's. And I can also tell you that you're going to be a happier person if you take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to be useless. You're going to be useless to yourself, to your family, to your other loved ones. And so you've got to take care of yourself. I think those would be the messages to start with. And then after that, let's get into discussions about therapeutic fibbing. Let's get into discussions about making sure that that emotional relationship is calm and soothing as you communicate with your loved one.
You have been a part of public policy your entire career. What are the questions that are out there in the future?
We can do a better job in helping caregivers be aware of coping, learning, and surviving. If we know it's coming, we can make the business community and make governmental units and make the medical profession all understanding of what's coming and what could be done to make it different. Right now, caregiving is not a matter covered under Medicare. And people are struggling financially, and the statistics have proven that long term, you help out that caregiver, they're going to live longer, they're going to be healthier, and they're going to be able to do a better job.
You're still owner of a lobbying firm. Tell me about your life of balance now.
Really, I think my life is pretty much centered yet still around Elaine. I don't really have too much interest, time, and energy to do too many other things. I do feel very passionate about helping create this awareness by caregivers and for caregivers. And I think if you could summarize my life, I would say it's helping Elaine in all possible to be who she is now. And then it's trying to make sure that we focus on the importance of caregiving and caregivers so that they can cope, learn, and survive.
I've been a journalist for 46 years. I had never heard the term therapeutic fibbing until Governor Schreiber. I understand it now. Wisconsin has a deep gratitude, as do you all, for Governor Schreiber for being a point person on that. So part of this, our segments is part of that interview with Marty Schreiber. Well, Wisconsin had a decision. We had 31 interviews. We had maybe 18 hours worth of taped interviews. So how do we present it? We all lead such busy lives. Do you think you could sit there for an hour and 32 minutes and watch all 12 segments? So, probably not. So we decided to break it up into 12 bite-sized segments. And each of these has a different focus and a different flavor. So if we could go, this website just became live, wisi.org. Wisi.org is now the website dealing with dementia. And if you scroll down, you can see some of the 12 segments, please. You can click on risk factors, 10 warning signs, the coming tsunami, minorities at risk, voices with dementia. The first one there is former Representative Mike Ensley, who had a Capitol press conference that was very emotional, saying, I realized I had a problem when I couldn't read the legislative materials. Voices with dementia, pioneers are sitting right there, John and Susan McFadden, fascinating interview. And Journeys of Hope, dementia-friendly businesses, including Kalahari, we interview the Human Resources Director, and then helping her be who she is. That's the Marty Schreiber piece. So all this is available now. We're a nonprofit. All we can do is ask you to promote it. We put it out in the public domain. Thank you for trusting us to get it right. You can watch it now on your laptop, your iPad, tablet, on your computer. You can also see it on Charter and Time Warner beginning at 7 and 9:30 tonight and the next few nights. In other words, we did compile all 12 segments into one long chunk, 1 minute and 32. So in closing, thanks for what you do. Thanks for letting Wisconsin Eye be a part of that. And I'll be available to answer any other questions. Tom, thank you.
Thanks. This is on. Okay, thanks, Steve. You guys have added a great amount to the body of work that needs to be out there to raise awareness about Alzheimer's issues. And so thank you. So as we head on out of here now, remember to visit the exhibits and displays. The workshops will begin at 1:45. Our Walk to End Alzheimer's is in the lobby starting at 5 p.m. And join us after the walk for our social from 6 to 7 p.m. this evening in the Great Kazoo. And don't forget our 3 outstanding evening workshops that are planned for 7 o'clock this evening. And then tomorrow morning we begin promptly at 8, breakfast starting at 7, so we work hard. So have a great afternoon, and thanks, everybody.